Well, hey there. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Shelby John. I am a clinical social worker. I specialize in trauma, addictions, and anxiety. And I also coach women in recovery who are ready to up-level their lives and really uncover the truth about the lies they've been living. So I want to take you on a little journey with me today. I want you to imagine that you're sitting in a large room full of all of your colleagues, hundreds of your colleagues. And you woke up this morning, you slipped on a long, comfortable, flowy sundress and some cute sandals, and you came down to this conference, this room of people. Probably had some coffee, maybe a bagel, and you picked the seat you wanted to view the conference from. You enjoyed the first couple speakers, and you probably checked your email, maybe texted your kids good morning. It's just a typical day at a conference. And then, over the loudspeaker, you hear your name. It's a little shocking at first because you weren't expecting to hear your name at this conference. So you perk up, listen in again. There it is. You're being paged to come to the room outside, to the lobby outside of this room, and you have no idea why. So of course you get up and walk out to the lobby, and there are two policemen and some official conference staff waiting for your arrival. I don't have to imagine it. I lived that 20 years ago. That's exactly what happened to me at a conference in Washington, D.C., with hundreds of other social workers and foster care youth present as a direct result of my addiction. I was whisked away to a city police department. I was interrogated by detectives who did not believe me. And I spent 72 hours in a jail cell. And I had no idea why. That was the bottom for me. Amazingly, the legal details took care of themselves, but left me standing there alone at a conference where I was the helper, drenched in the overwhelming reality that the person who most needed the help was me. And it started with seeing the truth about the lies that I believed. And as it turns out, they're the same lies that most women believe about themselves. And that's when I learned that recovery is not a one-size-fits-all experience. It starts with identifying the lies that you're living. And in my professional experience, there are 5 lies that most women believe. Lie number 1, I'm not good enough. When I was 5 years old, my biological father left our family. I felt abandoned, not good enough for even my own father. I can remember him kneeling down, looking at me through those dark-rimmed glasses, his forehead glowing where the hairline had receded. He looked like a giant. In that moment, he changed the trajectory of my life with a trauma that forged the path for so many of the lies I believed about myself for decades. He said he was going to my grandmother's house to chop wood, and he never came back. He remarried, had 2 sons, and he left my sister and I behind. We visited him, but he was never around. We called, but he did not pick up. The abandonment by my biological father created the trauma neural pathway that I was not enough, not worthy of his love. And I can't help but wonder if it's because his other 2 children were boys. Lie number 2, I have to meet others' needs first. Women are taught that they must put their needs aside and be sure that everyone else is taken care of before they ever even do anything for themselves. They have to be all things to everyone and have a lean body and a positive attitude. Your husband, kids, even your job comes before your needs. We think self-care is selfish. But what's the first thing they tell you when you get on a plane? If the oxygen mask drops, put yours on first and then help your loved ones. Ladies, I need you to listen to the flight attendant. Line number 3, feelings are a weakness. When I was a young mom, I wanted to share what I thought were common struggles in raising young children. But when I did, all I saw were glassy-eyed stares in return. Some people even said things like, no, that's never happened to me, or I can't relate to that. It reinforced the perception that my life was not in order, that I was a big hot mess, and that most women were doing all of this much better than I was. What I learned was, we don't say things like that here. But behind closed doors, they lived the reality of their own lives, which was likely much different than what they showed in the preschool drop-off line. Line number 4, that's a woman's job. Growing up, you probably heard things like, you can't do that because you're a girl, or that's a boy's job. We see this in sports, corporate America, and in regular families doing ordinary things like washing dishes, laundry, or chopping wood. We make these gender identifications regarding men and women based on the belief of the lies that women can't, won't, or don't like certain things. But many women do embrace traditional roles, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with wanting to be a mom or work at a high level or hang out with your girlfriends. Where the lie derails you is when people tell you what you can and should do based on your gender, and you believe it. And line number 5, I don't have a choice. Women stay in bad marriages, unfulfilling jobs, or toxic relationships because they believe they don't have a choice. Not true. We can always choose how we respond. We can always choose how we show up. No matter what the circumstances are in your life, we always have a choice. So the lies act like quicksand. They slowly suck you down into idle helplessness. They keep you stuck on the couch, scrolling through social media and sending emojis off to people you don't even know and calling it emotional connection. You know the things you need to do, but you're not doing them. You should be going for a walk with your girlfriends. But what you'd rather do is go get a Chick-fil-A milkshake. And I know I'd get up off the couch for that. For me, it was a downward spiral in active addiction. The year before I got sober, I had my second suicide attempt. I was lost. I was stuck, and I was living in lies. And that made it easy for alcohol to keep me in a grip stronger than a hawk's talons. That's the impact of the lies. Your brain holds onto these beliefs like a child holds onto an adult's hand, afraid to let it go. You get stuck. Fear is the ultimate quicksand. And when you're stuck and afraid, you lose control of your life. That combination, that desperation, is what led me to my second suicide attempt. But let's face it, I'm still here. And that's not by chance. I did get unstuck. I did take control of my life. And I found a pathway that any woman can follow. So how do we get unstuck? Fortunately, there is a better way for women in recovery. And several years ago, it took me a long time to figure this out. We have options today that weren't available 20 years ago. So I got sober in AA, and I wouldn't trade that for the world. But 12-step programs are not the only way. And often, after we spend some time in these types of programs, we long for more. There's a craving for a different kind of growth, a different kind of recovery. The first thing we need to do is eliminate the negative thinking patterns that were developed and created over time due to past trauma and life experiences, and then carried with us into adulthood. What does it mean to eliminate them? We're going to dive into that really in depth in just a few minutes. As a woman in recovery for many years, I believe there wasn't a way to get rid of them. I kind of thought this was my new normal. I was sober, but I still kind of hated myself. Thankfully, I discovered that this is not true. That when we start doing the work of emotional sobriety, we begin to identify when the negative thoughts happen, why they happen, and how to reverse them. Daily habits and routines we know are critical for building success. And one of the most important routines is the morning routine. The specific actions done every single day and never deviated from. When you start your day off in this way with good habits and routines, it trains your brain to know that you honor and respect yourself. So this could be meditation, prayer, exercise, really whatever works for you. We don't know what the rest of the day is going to bring. So that time you can spend with yourself in the morning is invaluable. So I'd encourage you to just pick one thing to kind of start with in this area. I recommend getting rid of the snooze button. Create some space for yourself in the morning because success starts there. The next step is choosing your personal core values. When you get sober and start doing this work, you have to define what matters to you. What are the most important things? And those are your true values. For me, one of my core values is vitality. So all things health, wellness, aging gracefully, having relative happiness, and truly respecting myself the way I deserve. So if I find myself standing in front of my kitchen pantry, gorging myself on pretzel nuggets, my brain knows that I'm not living according to my values, and then things like anxiety show up. So fourth, we need to harness the energy of a spiritual connection. Energy is all around us. The world is made up of energy. And the pathway to recovery has to include tapping into that energy. I'm not here to tell you what to believe, and this isn't about religion at all. This is about energy. It's the energy of the truth versus the energy of lies. You've been living in lies. Once you choose your core values, you start to discover the energy of your truth. Just because you've been living in lies doesn't mean you have to continue. Of course not. You can restart anytime. And all you have to do is identify the lie or the lies that are running your life. You can do it right now. Literally, you can be honest with yourself. What's one lie that is running your life right now? So you remember some of mine? I'm not good enough, and I have to put other people's needs first. I showed you mine. Now be honest with yourself and show yourself yours. What are those lies that you are living? And whatever they are, these 4 pillars will help bring you back to the truth. Eliminating negative thinking patterns, transforming daily habits and routines, discovering your personal core values, and harnessing the energy of a spiritual connection. I want you to commit to the 4 pillars and then retrain your brain and heal the neural pathways that years of addiction and lots of other challenging experiences have damaged. I have already climbed out of the pit of despair and of active addiction, and I've reclaimed my life. But let me be clear, it is not Disney World, right? It is raw and real and vulnerable and painful and joyful and serene. My life is 100% different now that lies no longer run it. I have freedom today because I no longer live in the lies. When you stop living in the lies, you still have to clean your house and pay your bills and argue with your kids. But you stop living in lies, you get reacquainted with the power of making your own choices, the power of feeling vulnerable, the power of feeling all of life, the power of living in your truth. And my truth is, I'm an alcoholic who's no longer living in lies. And that is the greatest freedom in the world. And today I really want to share with you 5 ways to change your negative thinking patterns that you can start right now. This is part of the program that I use to work with women all the time, and I want to share them with you. I also have, I'm going to share my screen so I can show you more about this as we're talking. And I also have a handout that I think would be really, really helpful to you as you're diving into more of this. So I'm going to share my screen. Just give me 1 second. And I'll get to my slides. And then, okay, so today we're going to talk about the 5 ways to change your negative thinking. I can get it too, though. There we go. Okay. 5 ways to change your negative thinking. And these are fairly simple, but never easy, right? That's how it goes. Most things we do are simple, but not easy. And, that's okay. So today I'm going to walk you through this, and I'll send a link to the guide that supplements it. So just real quick, we're going to go over these negative thinking patterns, like when they come up, why do they come up? And then we're going to talk about the skills to change them. I need to turn my video off so I can, so you can see the whole screen. Hold on 1 second. Okay. So just imagine you're kind of going through your day and then something happens, right? You get a phone call from the principal at your school, something's going on with your kid, somebody's done something, and you're immediately activated, right? Maybe it's a comment from your partner. Maybe you've gotten news about a health condition, or just, anything, the stuff that happens just throughout the day. You get a bad test grade, just something that comes up, and immediately the negative thoughts start, just like they always do, right? Oh my gosh, why did my kid get in trouble again? Why is he always getting in trouble? He never listens, or like, oh, why can't I handle this? Like, what am I doing wrong? Like, I can't handle this. Or why doesn't he love me? He's going to leave, these kinds of things. I'm stupid. I'm a failure. I'm not good enough. They immediately start to come in. So negative thoughts happen for a variety of reasons. Number 1 is the fear of the future. So often we are focused on trying to predict the future, what's going to happen, like in our lives. We joke about having a crystal ball. Some of us are faith-driven. Some of us are believe in other types of ways to do this. But we're really focused on kind of worrying about the future. And then we're also focused on worrying about the present, right? So we have so many things to do. There's so many people to deal with, so many places to be. It's just overwhelming. We just get overloaded with present day information. And then we might have things from our past that just aren't great, right? Mistakes we've made. Maybe we've done some things we aren't proud of. Maybe we tried something and we failed at it and it was embarrassing, or you made a decision that other people kind of advised you not to do and you did it anyway, and now you have consequences. Whatever it is, we have regrets from our past. And once those negative thoughts start, if we don't take any action and intervene, they just continue. They kind of just grow and swirl around, and then it really contribute to anxiety building up, and it can make you pretty uncomfortable. So, but part of anxiety is a little bit natural and normal, right? That fight or flight mechanism that we have is not all bad, right? Some of it is helpful to help us respond to threats that put us into danger, right? Like real, or like a bear chasing you, or other things like a relationship issue, or things like that. So there's an appropriate level of anxiety that's actually beneficial. Kind of like if you're doing a big hike somewhere and it's a little bit dangerous, or it's scary. Like there's parts of you that are going to feel a tiny bit anxious about that, but that's a good thing because you don't want to fall off the cliff, right? Or maybe you're walking alone at night and you have a little bit of anxiety, but it's probably good because that's awareness that helps you stay alert and pay attention to your surroundings. So a little bit of anxiety is not a bad thing. But fear is the driving force for these negative thought patterns, and then ultimately for anxiety, because that's the reason we even have any of these negative thinking patterns. It's about fear. So just imagine, like I kind of already mentioned, there's some sort of a threat, right? It could be a person, it could be, a mistake you made, some sort of an emotional, it could be a food, a substance, just whatever. And it kind of sends your brain into fight or flight mode. And you get ready, you're like a lion, right? You're like chase the antelope, or the antelope, you're running away from the lion, like get away from the lion. And you're getting ready to run. And it feels like heart racing, irritability. It feels like it can feel the opposite, like fatigue, restlessness. It can feel like difficulty concentrating, just racing thoughts, inability to fall asleep, things like that. And most of the time, these thoughts are irrational, right? These negative thoughts and limiting beliefs they're not necessarily, oftentimes they're not real or rational. They're oftentimes irrational, which we're going to have a little bit more in a minute. So our brains don't know the difference between real and imagined fear. So it only knows fear. And so it begins to kind of activate those physical symptoms, that fight or flight mode, no matter what. So if you're telling yourself there's a bear chasing you, or it could be like, I'm worried about this test, I'm worried about this job interview, I'm worried about this conversation about a conflict. If you're telling yourself that this is a problem, that this is a fear, your brain doesn't know or if you're worried about something that's not happening right now, it's a worry about the future or a potential situation. Your brain only knows what you're telling it, whether it's real or imagined, and it'll still activate those symptoms. So what we want to start to learn to do is intervene, to take control of those negative thoughts, and then ultimately be able to change them and create new patterns. And I want to really hone in on this, because sometimes the people I work with get really caught up in focusing on kind of why is this happening right now? Like, why am I having these thoughts? I've done everything I'm supposed to be doing. I've eaten healthy this week. I've gotten proper sleep. I'm doing my exercises. So why am I having all of this anxiety, or why am I having a panic attack when I've done all the things I'm supposed to do? But repeatedly telling yourself that, or kind of beating yourself up for it even, is really going to increase your anxiety, right? It's not helpful, and it really can make things a lot worse. So we don't want to focus on, at least in the moment, we don't want to be focused on why is this happening. It's really not that important to understand it in that moment, why this is happening, because it just, like I said, creates more stress, and it keeps you in the problem, and it doesn't allow you to get into the solution, at least not very quickly. Okay, so what are we going to do instead then? What are we going to do? So we want to acknowledge the thoughts. We want to acknowledge the feelings and the experience. We want to notice them, and then kind of call it out, I guess, if you will. That's what I'm saying, acknowledge. We want to notice the thoughts that are coming in and how they went completely to the negative, right? And that thought doesn't mean that it's true. It doesn't mean that it's true, but it's creating an anxiety response, and your body is responding as well, which makes it feel very real and very true. So let's take a quick look at what happens. So there's some kind of an event, right? Kind of how we started off. There's an event that happens, and this is called the thought triangle. It's very common in cognitive behavioral therapy. They use this thought triangle to help people see visually how our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors are literally connected to everything. So you have this event, and the event happens. So let's see if I can use an example. I'll use an example. My husband criticizes something, okay? Like, he makes a critical statement. So that event makes me go right into that I'm not good enough belief about myself, okay? So I have the I'm not good enough belief, and it's starting to marinate and get going. And that leads to feelings. So that I'm not good enough belief about myself makes me feel sad and upset and like a failure, and like, just not good enough. I'm not worthy. I'm not, it feels really yucky, right? And that starts to come in. And then that feeling is going to lead to certain behaviors. And for me, in the past, that would have been substances, but today it's more like it could be food related. That's usually my go-to. So I might want to go get that Chick-fil-A milkshake, right? And be like, oh, we're going to numb out with food. Or I might check out a little bit and be like, well, I'm just going to isolate a little and, watch Netflix. It can be a lot of things. It could be shopping. It could be sex. It could be, people pleasing. There's a lot of ways people do their feelings. So then our job is then to challenge those negative thoughts and beliefs, right? We really want to take them on. Because every time you're tempted to react in the same old way, I really want you to do what Deepak Chopra says. He says, ask if you want to be a prisoner of your past or a pioneer of your future. I mean, those are sort of big words and it feels a little fancy and sometimes, but like if you can kind of dumb it down even to make it your own. But when you're tempted to react in those ways, like when I'm tempted to go to my pantry and eat those pretzel nuggets or go out and go to Chick-fil-A, I need to ask myself, like, do I want to be that same way? Do I want to be stuck in those past ways of doing things that got me the results that I don't like? Or do I want to be an active member of the person I'm trying to create for the future, right? Do I want to be a pioneer of my future? So once we sort of identified what the negative thoughts are that we commonly have, most of us have pretty regular ones. Usually we have patterns. Mine are always, I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, I'm not thin enough. It could be things like I'm a failure, I could have done more, I'm not safe. There's a lot of different, I'm not worthy. So you've really identified those and started taking a look at them, and you can use the triangle to sort of see when that stuff happens, how does it make you feel? And then what do you do? So this thought inventory is really a practice of self-appraisal. This is an ability for you to become much more self-aware, which helps a lot because generally speaking, the research indicates that people think they are very self-aware when in fact they're actually not. So this self-appraisal is an honest analysis of yourself in the situation, right? And it's also a willingness to admit your part in it. Like what did you do? Or what is your part? And it's not really, fault is a big word. I mean, I used it here, but because most people know it, but it's not to be victim blaming. It's to be accountable, really, to be able to say like, well, what was my role in that situation with my husband giving me that critical comment? Was I being defensive with him? Did I make a mistake and not own up to it, which was a common practice of mine? Sometimes I would make mistakes and then try to cover it up. So, what is my role? We always want to be asking ourselves that. That's what emotional maturity looks like. So then you're going to ask yourself, okay, I have these negative thoughts. I have a list of them. Are they rational or irrational? So if it's rational, it means there's evidence to prove it, right? So what evidence do I have to show that I am actually not good enough? Have people told me that? Well, like legit people who would have authority to do so. Have my employers told me that? Has other therapists told me I'm not good at certain things or whatever? Or is there actual proof? That means it's kind of a rational thought. And if it is, then you need to figure out what it is that you can do to accept that part of you. How can I accept this part of me if it is true? But if it's not rational, meaning it's not true, there's no evidence to support this thought about yourself, what can you do to change it? What is something you can do now to change that thought? So you want to kind of step into this with me, right? You can imagine one of your own trigger situations. We generally all have them. Usually for me, it's any kind of criticism or mistakes, things like that. They start to cause stress and anxiety in your body, right? And you can sort of visualize this. You can allow your mind and body to kind of step into it. So when that's happening, a great go-to strategy is the stop sign technique. You can literally stop yourself, close your eyes, and visualize a huge stop sign, right? Like this. Everyone knows what a stop sign looks like. You can make it flashing, you can make it neon, whatever you like, but just be able to call up a vision of a stop sign. I've even had people print it out or put like red dots around their cars or homes to kind of help signal this. And just stop. You want to stop. You can even say the word stop out loud. So that's going to slow your brain down. It's going to slow down your nervous system, slow down your body's response to the anxiety, and allow yourself to be able to process through this next part of transitioning into changing the thought, right? So you want to be able to stop what's going on. Like, for example, I might say, oh my gosh, here we go again. I can never do anything good enough for him. He's always got to have something to say, I'm never going to be good enough. And I need to say, stop. Let's not do that right now. And then change that into a more positive statement right there in the moment that can resonate with you. But it doesn't have to be super dramatic. Sometimes people want to go in or they think I mean like, oh, I'm the greatest wife in the world. Why would he ever think anything negative about me? Or I'm the best mom ever, or, anything like that. We don't want to be so dramatic. We want it to just be a slight positive shift, just a gentle shift into a positive. So I use statements like, wow, even though I made this one mistake, I did a bunch of things really well today. Or I know how to take care of myself when things don't go right. Or I can do hard things. Or I am deeply loved and accepted by my God. Whatever works for you. I kind of suggest that you come up with 2 or 3 of these positive statements for yourself and kind of create them almost as like mantras. Write them down, post them somewhere. Put them in your phone, right? So you can see them and they're highly visible. I gave you a couple examples and then here's a couple more. I know this is hard right now, but you can do hard things. I love the mistake one because I'm a mistake maker. So I love to be able to say, I made a mistake, but I have done many things really well today. So you find the ones that work best for you. Then there's some other great coping skills like EFT, which is emotional freedom technique, or tapping. I don't know if you're familiar with tapping. It's powerful. It is extremely effective. It is something you can do anytime. You can teach yourself how to do it. You can do it any time of day. You can step into a bathroom and privately do it at work. You can do it in your car. You can do it in your bed. And it's really effective at calming your nervous system and slowing down the process and really retraining and reframing those negative beliefs about yourself. You can get a ton of information about EFT on the tappingsolution.com website. They are excellent. They also have a podcast, or at least they did, which I'm sure that's still, you can have access to those episodes. But I highly recommend everybody start to familiarize themselves with EFT because you just never know when you might want to do it. It's really great for cravings, for anxiety, for just depression, any kind of trauma or situation that's bothering you. I highly recommend it. My favorite also is bathing yourself in positive content, right? So to me, this is just the best because it's very effective in helping us to get through challenging times, periods of high anxiety, periods of time when you're just being really hard on yourself, when you feel like there's no other way out. So finding things that are just really positive, happy, funny. Comedy is a great anxiety reducer. It could be spiritual in nature. Maybe there's a podcast or sermons you like to listen to. Maybe it's a book that's super powerful and very positive. YouTube videos, Netflix, whatever works for you. But find the positive content that you love and then use it every day for like days at a time when you're in one of these funky periods, right? Like, so say you're in like a low time or an anxiety time. I just always tell myself, nope, this is what we're doing and we're not going to deviate from it. Making connections with positive people is really important. This is something that I can never stress enough. I think sometimes, and of course we've had COVID and some other, we have social media and other things that are drawing us away from those connections that are so desperately needed for us, that are hardwired in us to have. And there's a certain magic really that starts to transpire when we come together and we share our lives. And it doesn't always have to be in the most intimate detail. Sometimes it is, but it doesn't always have to be that way. But just being with another woman that has positive energy can really help to shift you out of anything negative and into a much more positive frame. And not just for that moment, but over time, right? Because if you're hanging out with people who are always negative or always, complaining, or they have bad marriages, or they're always, I'm saying we shouldn't do that sometimes. We do need to. But if that's always the way it is, you're gonna start to kind of pick that up, right? And suddenly you might find yourself feeling like, oh, maybe my marriage isn't so great, or oh, maybe my job isn't for me. You start to kind of question your own things. So you want to make sure you surround yourself with positive people and connect with them often. I already mentioned EFT. There's the website, thetappingsolution.com. It is extremely effective and very powerful. You can also teach your kids to do it. That's how I learned about it when my oldest daughter, who's now 19, was 5. She was going to kindergarten and struggling with sleep issues because she was nervous about kindergarten. And so we discovered this tool and started using it on her, and it's been really helpful. This is what it looks like. This is the tapping points on your body, the specific points, and a little bit of the procedure. But again, you can find this all online, and it's very easy to follow. So I also have a little course called the 5 Ways to Take Control of Your Anxiety. It has more detailed grounding techniques. It's a video-based course. If anybody's interested, I'm certainly willing to share that information with you. And I also have the link for the handout that goes right along with this workshop that I will send as well, so that you can access that. I hope this has been helpful. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out anytime.